With Vrbo's last-minute deals, you can save over $50 on your spring getaway. So whether it's a mountain escape, city break, or a week at the beach, there's still time to get great discounts. Book your next stay now. Average savings $72. Select homes only.
And Doug.
There's nowhere I wouldn't go to help someone customize and save on car insurance with Liberty Mutual, even if it means sitting front row at a comedy show.
Hey everyone, check out this guy and his bird. What is this, your first date?
Oh, no. We help people customize and save on car insurance with Liberty Mutual together. We're married. Me to a human, him to a bird.
Yeah, the bird looks out of your league anyways.
Get a quote at libertymutual.com or with your local agent.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
A science story, huh?
These NYU scientists,
I felt
right.
I was so
and I just thought, well,
I had figured it out.
it was that golden moment.
Because science was on my side.
Hey everyone, welcome to The Story Clatter, where we bring you true personal stories about science that remind us just how strange and honestly kind of miraculous it is to be human. I'm your host, Misha Gajewski, and in today's episode, both of our storytellers come face to face with their impending doom. Not to be dramatic or anything, but really, each of them is forced to confront a deeply uncertain, genuinely scary unknown. And what unfolds is less about the fear itself and more about what it means to keep going when you don't know what's coming next. Our first story is from storyteller Mary Jo Pollack. Her story was recorded at ASU Kerr in Scottsdale, Arizona in April 2025. Here's Mary Jo.
I'm in the PET scan tube listening to classic rock because you're in there for like 45 minutes or to an hour. What do you want to listen to? Classic rock. I grew up with it. It's my thing. And it's a 2-day operation. So today I'm being tested for tau and tomorrow for amyloid. Those are 2 protein plaques that build up on the brain and cause Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease is my greatest fear. 3 generations of women before me died with Alzheimer's disease. My great-grandmother, my grandmother, and my mother. I didn't know my great-grandmother. She died before I was born, and I'm actually named after her and wear her ring. But I knew my grandmother very well. She only lived about a mile from us when I was growing up, and I'd ride my bike over. They had a big backyard. She was always in the garden. There were tulips in every color, lilacs blooming us in St. Paul. So the Midwest, and this garden was vibrant 9 months out of the year when it wasn't covered with snow. And then she taught me how to bake chocolate chip cookies and brownies, and I'd go in her house. I'd follow her around like a puppy. She always looked beautiful. She had gray-green eyes and blonde hair that she wore in a French twist. She was always left the house dressed impeccably, makeup, and the shoes and purse always matched. And I remembered the last time I saw her, she was in assisted living. My grandfather made my mom and my aunt promise, because when he was on his deathbed, to never put her in assisted living. But that is impossible not to do sometimes. So I came out from LA to St. Paul, I escaped the snow, and pretty much to visit my grandmother. And I go into the assisted living facility and I see my aunt talking to some little old lady down the hall. I'm like, who's she talking to? And as I get closer, I realize that's Grammy with the bad perm and the gray hair. and disheveled clothes. I couldn't believe it. And as I get a little closer, she jumps up, runs toward me, arms out. Mary Jo is here. Mary Jo is here. And I was flabbergasted. Based on what everybody told me, I thought for sure she wouldn't know who I was, and this was going to be horrible. But she recognized me, and my mom and aunt and grandmother and I, we went to lunch, and we visited and had a lovely afternoon, and she walked us to the elevator, and I turned around and said, "Oh, Grammy, I love you." And she looked at me with those eyes, with no recognition, and said, "Why?" I waited until the elevator doors closed before I cried, and then cried all the way home. And I also cried a lot for my mother, because about 15 years later, my brother and I started to deal with her and her memory. And I got her to go to a neurologist and take some medications. And then we were making arrangements to move her into an assisted living that had levels of care. And she signed a new lease in a new building for a year. But her boyfriend, Bob, lived down the hall, so there was going to be some oversight. I wasn't living in LA anymore, and my brother worked, and, And so, okay. And the moving day, I did come down to help with the move. A moving day, she's sitting there, and I said, "What?" And she said, "I changed my mind. Tell everybody, tell them to take it all back." "Oh, no, you can't go back, Mom." "Why not?" "Well, like, you moved in here, so your apartment was vacant, and somebody's moved into your apartment. They're moving in like you're moving in here." I thought this was just a vacation. No. This is your new house. And when the lease was up, she did go into assisted living. Poor Bob. And I thought, well, maybe I need to be part of the solution. So I looked around after I moved to Tucson 10 years ago, and I thought, I found a study at University of Arizona, Banner Alzheimer's Institute, and I was accepted. And the first few years, all I did was neuro and cognitive testing, which is being in an office for a few hours, doing, filling out tests and doing puzzles, and they test your memory in a bunch of different ways. And then the doctor who was in charge of the study said, "I can get you some scans." And that's great. So I had an MRI and a CT scan. And then about a year or so later, he said, "I can get you PET scans if you can get up to Phoenix to Mayo." Yeah, I can. And part of the study is that when I die, my brain goes to Mayo. And I don't know what I'm doing with the rest of my body. I told my lawyer to put it that they could just throw it in the desert. So I get in the study, and the scans, they're clear. And then about a year or so, I can get the PET scans. So and the PET scans are definitive tests for Alzheimer's disease. One day you get a dye for tau, one day for amyloid. And a few months after this, I had this PET scans. For real science, that's positron emission tomography. And I met with the doctor, and He said, I don't always tell people the results of their scans. It's a blind study, but I feel that you need to know because of your family history. And I'm starting to sweat and I'm ready to cry. I'm really getting upset because I don't know what he's going to say. And he said, I've examined your scans thoroughly, and there is no tau and no amyloid. And because of your family history with your great-grandmother and your grandmother and your mother, Mayo is really excited to get your brain. Well, you tell Mayo they're going to have a long wait.
That was Mary Jo, and I really admire her courage for facing her terrifying family history head-on. If you'd like to learn more about her, head over to our website, storyteller.org. Not everyone feels comfortable stepping up to the mic, and that's fine. There's another way to make Story Clatter happen, by becoming a donor. Right now, more than ever, the voices of scientists and science communicators need to be heard. At Story Clatter, we know that personal stories can break through the noise, connect people to the human side of science, and make complex ideas feel real. But keeping these stories alive and accessible takes support. Our donors make this possible. They help us produce the podcast, share stories that might otherwise go unheard, and spark conversations that stick with you long after the episode ends. If you believe in the power of science storytelling, consider making a donation at storyclatter.org/donate. Most people give $10 a month, but every tax-deductible gift, big or small, helps keep the mics on and the stories coming. Thank you for helping make sure these voices are heard. Check out our new podcast called The Persistence Lab, a show from AbbVie that tells the stories of the patients, scientists, and clinicians who are committed to driving real change in medicine and healthcare, and the resilience that pushes them forward. These aren't headlines. They're deeply human moments that show how progress happens, one step at a time. You can find The Persistence Lab now on your favorite podcast platform. As soon as I found out I was pregnant, I stopped scooping my cat's litter, which meant my partner had to take over litter duty. And honestly, I feel kind of bad about it. No one likes scooping litter. So I'm very excited because we're about to try the Whisker Litter Robot, which feels like exactly the kind of thing both my partner and future me are going to be grateful for, especially because the idea of daily scooping while sleep deprived sounds terrible. The litter robot automatically cycles after every use, so you're not constantly scooping or handling waste every single day. And the Whisker app sends real-time notifications about usage, your cat's weight, and whether the unit needs attention, which honestly sounds amazing for tired, overwhelmed brains. I'm especially excited about having one less reoccurring chore to think about because when you're already managing a million tiny responsibilities, saving time and mental energy really matters. Whisker also has different litter robot models depending on your setup, whether you've got one cat or a whole furry little family. Plus, starter bundles that make getting set up easier. Maintain your cat's litter while focusing on your growing family. Learn more about Whisker Litter robot models and starter kits today to get set up before your new baby arrives. Take an additional $50 off bundles with code COLLIDER when you shop whisker.com/collider. That's an additional $50 off bundles with code COLLIDER at whisker.com/collider. Okay, after turning 30, I can't even have a couple of drinks without feeling like garbage the next morning. Like, I'll go out for dinner, have 2 glasses of wine, be home at a reasonable hour, drink water, eat food, do everything right. And then I wake up feeling foggy, low energy, just kind of off. And I swear, this did not used to happen. So, I was honestly a little skeptical when I tried Cheers Restore from Cheers Health, but I figured, why not? You take it after your last drink or before bed, and it basically works while you sleep. And the first time I tried it, the next morning I just felt normal. What's interesting is that the yuck feeling is not really about dehydration. The real issue is what's happening in your brain and liver overnight. Cheers uses DHM to help smooth out the next day rebound feeling in your brain, and cysteine to help your liver process alcohol's toxic byproducts faster. And they actually back it up with a feel at least 50% better or your money back guarantee. So yeah, take Cheers Restore after your last drink or before going to bed and wake up feeling at least 50% better or your money back. For a limited time, our listeners are getting 20% off their entire order by using code COLLIDER at cheershealth.com. Just head to cheershealth.com and use code COLLIDER for 20% off. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Our next story is from photographer Sabrina Samuel. Her story is recorded last year at a show we did in partnership with Trees Atlanta at our go-to spot, Waller's Coffee Shop. Here's Sabrina.
So there are two constants in my life. One is trees, and the other is photography. I was raised here in Atlanta. My parents divorced when I was very young, and we bounced around. Me and my sister bounced around a lot as kids. So there wasn't a lot of stability at home. And sometimes there wasn't a lot of happiness inside either. So I would go outside to find my happiness, to find stability and joy. And I found trees to be great friends. They're good listeners. They don't call you names. And they don't turn their back on you and stomp off in a rage. They're really great friends. The second constant that I've had throughout my life is photography. My Uncle Barney gave me a camera when I was 12, and I have been interpreting the world around me through the viewfinder of a camera ever since. Well, we grow up, don't we? And then we get in all this stuff in our head, and we overthink things, and we get so busy with work and what we think is real life. Well, I didn't quite lose my connection with trees as an adult, but it did definitely wane. I mean, my family will attest, we're hikers and campers, but that deep-rooted connection that I had with trees and nature waned a bit as I got older. All of that changed in 2023 when I was diagnosed with a brain aneurysm. My dad had a brain aneurysm. So I knew through my dad's experience what that can do to the body. Daddy's brain aneurysm burst, and he went through 3 brain surgeries, 36 days in ICU, and was left paralyzed on his left side. And he was tethered to a bed in a wheelchair the rest of his life. So to say I was freaking out is mild. I was really freaking out. Well, when you get a diagnosis like that, the first thing they do is they shuttle you off to a specialist. And I had a wonderful specialist, Dr. Caldy. The first visit, I dragged my husband Stanley with me because I knew I was going to be freaking out so much I wouldn't be able to hear what he had to say. Well, Dr. Caldy was fantastic. He told me where it was, how big it is, and all the stuff that can go with that. And then he started laying out, well, what are we going to go from here? He said, well, we could go ahead and do surgery. Or since this is your first brain scan and this is new, we could give it a year, do another brain scan, and reevaluate at that point. I just had to make sure my blood pressure didn't go up, and I had to make sure I stayed relatively calm, which, if you know me, that's a hard thing to do. So we left the office. I had 1 year in my head. 1 year. Was I going to live this next year paralyzed with fear and worry and anxiousness? Or was I going to grasp this year like it's my last year on this planet, walking with these 2 legs, going about doing things that I truly love? What did I love? I had to dig deep for that. And I was reminded of a hiking trip that we did with our kids when they were little. We hiked Blood Mountain. And on the way down, my youngest asked me, "Mom, when are you your happiest? Where's your happy place, Mom?" And without a doubt, I answered, "When I'm in the woods hiking on a trail, that's my happy place." That's what I wanted to do for this last year. My husband's fantastic. Within weeks, he had me in the Tongass National Forest in Alaska, one of the largest and oldest temperate rainforests on our planet. I got to soak up all that goodness that those trees had on that trip. Then he took me to Canada, and I got to hike around the ancient forest in BC, British Columbia, Canada, with our good friend Judy over there. We camped under the live oaks on Cumberland Island. I did a few trips on my own. I got to visit 35,000 acres of trees here in Georgia, the Piedmont National Wildlife Refuge Center. Go see it. It's fabulous. No tourist. I kept going through the forest. I knew I need to deal with some things. The first thing I really felt impressed that I needed to deal with was my own mortality. I mean, we all have an expiration date. So let me face it. And the place that I knew I needed to go to face this was Driftwood Beach on Jekyll Island. My single mom, whenever she'd scrape together enough money to take us camping there, we would go to Jekyll. And as a kid, I would see those majestic trees lying on the beach. It was like tree bones, tree skeletons. And I remember as a kid rubbing my hand on them, thinking, "Oh, I'm talking to tree ghosts." What better place to go and face mortality than a beautiful place like that? Well, photography kicked in, and I took my tripod, my camera, and I started exploring the beach. And one of those beautiful, majestic tree skeletons was lying out on the beach on its side, and branches went up towards the sky as if to make an embrace for anyone who would pass under it. I set my tripod up there, and I began passing under that embrace, because I knew, as we have an expiration date, I really am kind of a walking ghost. And I took hundreds of photos of me just ghosting underneath those arms of the branches of that tree. And they taught me to face mortality with beauty and dignity. Keep going. I had to deal with something else. Adulthood had stole my joy. Too cerebral. We overthink everything, don't we? The trees that taught me joy were in New Mexico. One of our favorite places to go as a family is Abiquiu. Georgia O'Keeffe, famous American artist, has a ranch out there called Ghost Ranch. And on her ranch, there's a creek. And on that creek are these majestic cottonwoods. If you ever get to hear the wind go through the canopy of a cottonwood, it's like they clap. They're so excited to see you. They're so joyful at your coming. I stood underneath those cottonwoods and the wind coming through. And as the wind made their leaves clap for me, I threw my arms up and released that aneurysm, released that fear, released all the stupid adult things I'd bought into, and I gave it to the wind. Year was up. It's time for that second brain scan. And I ain't gonna lie to you, I didn't sleep very well the night before that brain scan. The brain scan showed my aneurysm went from 3.6 millimeters to 1.6 millimeters. How did that happen? Follow up with the specialist was really lighthearted. Stanley didn't have to go with me. I thought I could handle it on my own. Dr. Caldy, he explained, well, you reduced your stress. That reduces inflammation in the body. And he said, and then he asked me what I did throughout the year. And I told him about all of our adventures in the woods, soaking up nature. And I told him, I said, oh yeah, and by the way, I gave my aneurysm to the wind while I was out in New Mexico. I said, I guess I better go out there and give thanks. And Dr. Caldy looked me straight in the eye. He said, yes, you do. You need to go back out there and give thanks. What kind of doctor does that? Great doctors do that. 2 weeks later, I was on the plane, headed to New Mexico. I was going to go give thanks. I bought my sage from a little hawker in Santa Fe, got in the rental car, headed that 50 miles north of Santa Fe to Abiquiu, went underneath those trees, lit my sage, did my little woo-woo dance, cried a little, and gave thanks. Trees have power to heal. Thank you.
Wow. The power of nature is truly incredible. That was Sabrina, and if you'd like to learn more about her, visit our website, storyclatter.org. Our website is just one way to connect with Storyclatter, but you can always follow us on social. We're on all the platforms, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky. Head to storyclatter.org to become a financial supporter. Check out our upcoming shows and workshops on learning how to tell your own science story, all at storyclatter.org. And if you enjoy this podcast, tell a friend. Share an episode, introduce someone to the Storyclatter, and help bring more people into the world of science storytelling. This podcast is produced by me, Misha Gajewski, along with Jen Chen, Nikisha Roberts-Washington, and Aaron Barker. The stories featured in today's episode were produced by Sad Suwarna, Raj Sivaraman, Mesa Saleda, and Kelly Vinyl. Special thanks goes out to Storyclatter's board and team. Our theme music is by Ghost. And next week, I'll be back with 2 stories about whales. Until next time, thanks so much for listening. If you've ever found yourself stuck overthinking even the smallest decision, what to do next, what to choose, what actually matters, then you'll want to check out All the Hacks. It's hosted by Chris Hutchins, and it's all about smarter ways to approach your life, your time, and your decisions, with practical ideas you can actually use. As a chronic overthinker myself, I really loved a recent episode called Stop Overthinking and Start Deciding with Derek Sivers. Chris and Derek get into why trying to optimize everything can actually make things worse. They also shared a simple coin flip trick that helps you make decisions faster, and how journaling can act like a superpower for figuring out what you really want. It's one of those conversations that sticks with you and makes your next decision feel a whole lot easier. So, search for All the Hacks. That's All the Hacks in your podcast app, hit follow, and start upgrading your life today.